Giants general manager Zack Minasian addresses the media and tells us why the Giants haven't made bigger moves and why they were out on Imai. Kind of. That's all coming up on Locked On Giants.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, y'all? I'm Alan Stiles. Welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. On the show, we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that combines passion, analytics with the eye test, and a little bit of fun. I'm from the Bay Area, but I live in Sacramento now, and I host a show at Sacktown Sports 1140, as well as emceeing Sacramento Rivercast games. All in all, I'm lucky enough to cover a team I've been a fan of all my life. Today, we are discussing Zack Minasian's comments as they were making the Tyler Mahle signing official, and Tyler Mahle addressed the media why the Giants haven't made a move yet. Susan Slusser of the San Francisco Chronicle has an article out there that kind of addresses some of the things that we've been talking about and some of the reasons maybe they have been a little quiet during this offseason. And last but not least, we asked the question, is Buster Posey being blocked? Is he being stonewalled? Are there moves that he would want to make, but ultimately it's not Buster's money? Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Okay, so they made the Tyler Mahle signing official, and because of that, they addressed the media. Tyler Mahle did, as well as Zack Minasian. So I wanted to start with what Tyler Mahle said. He said a couple things, but this is something that stuck out for what it's worth. Tyler Mahle said this is the best he has felt physically since 2021 when he made 33 starts. He was limited to 16 last season because of shoulder issues, but he was able to return for 2 appearances in September. So that was from Alex Pavlovich, who of course was on that call, and Tyler Mahle was saying, hey man, I feel great. You know, this is a good situation for me, and I think I could continue to bounce back. He was a very high recommendation from Bruce Bochy, and everybody loves Bruce Bochy, and Bruce Bochy says loves the competitor in him, really sees that fire. So if he can stay healthy, they think this could be one of those value plays that ends up working out for them. So speaking of value plays and speaking of some of the moves the Giants have and haven't made, Zack Minasian also addressed the media, and these are some of the things that he had to say. This is a combination of some quotes that he had with the rounding out of it from the SF Chronicle. So here you go. I don't know if we're ever done, Minasian said. I think we're very comfortable with the 5, talking about the 5 starters that we have, and then the bundle of arms behind them. Our depth is in a much better spot than it was in the beginning of the offseason, so we're happy where we're at. We'll keep working at it, but we do think this is a solid 5-man rotation going into the spring. Minasian was asked, here you go, specifically about Tatsuya Imai's less than anticipated 3-year, $54 million deal with the Astros. He said he can't go into free agent conversations after the fact, nor weigh in on other teams' deal, but did add, quote, I will say this when it comes to free agency, it's on us as a front office to evaluate the talent available and make recommendations. Our ownership has been extremely supportive of the recommendations we make and go from there, and that hasn't changed. We just continue to do our work and try to put the best team out on the field. And last but not least, just a little note so y'all are aware, like much of the Giants front office, Minasian is in South Korea this week. CEO Larry Baer, president of baseball operations Buster Posey, manager Tony Vitello, and shortstop Willie Adames are among those on the trip, meeting up with center fielder Jung-Hoo Lee and attending numerous cultural events as the team seeks to strengthen its ties to the country. In addition, the Giants contingent, in conjunction with Major League Baseball, is holding a clinic for high school players. So that's pretty cool. And I just wanted to let everybody know that that was going on. But let's get back to what Minasian said about Imai, because you can look at this a couple ways, right? I want to reread what he said. He said, I will say this, when it comes to free agency, it's on us as a front office to evaluate the talent available and make recommendations. And our ownership has been extremely supportive of the recommendations we make and go from there. And that hasn't changed. So you could look at this and say, sounds like they didn't recommend signing Imai, and that's why they didn't sign them. Or, hey, we did recommend to sign Imai, and this was a rare situation where we wanted him, but ownership said, I don't think that we should pay that, even if it was a lesser contract. Those are the two options I see. And if you're asking me, and we'll get into it a little bit later when it talks about Buster Posey, whether he's being stonewalled or not, kind of sounds like it's the latter. I'd like to believe that it was the latter because this wasn't a crazy deal that the Giants would have had to embark on. We know that there were the player opt-outs that Imai is going to have, and I know the Giants don't like that. But, hey, at that price point, you probably could have lived with it. So the two options, it could either be that they didn't recommend Imai, and that's very possible, and that could have been why they didn't go after him, or they did and ownership said, hey, this one we kind of want to pass on and see what else is out there for whatever reason, because I don't know why he would bring that up, right? I don't know why he would bring that up. I mean, obviously he can't talk about details, but he could have just said, something more typical. Hey, we assessed the situation, just didn't seem like a good fit. He could have said that. Why are you bringing up that ownership normally, or ownership has been okaying a lot of the moves that you've made, either if you want to say that they didn't okay this or that you didn't ask them to okay it. So those are the two options. I will let you in the comments decide what side you think it actually occurred on and how you think that all went down. The other thing that he brought up, just as far as the rotation being set, I know a lot of people aren't happy about that, and I'm not thrilled about it either. Does sound like they are done. He did the typical, we're never actually done. It seems like you're kind of actually done. But I will say this, a lot of the names that we've brought up before, right? Not really Carson Wisenhunt, because I do think that they'll continue to push him as a starter. But if it doesn't work out for him there, you could also look at some of these young names as bullpen arms. Something that I saw in the comments when we did that show last week, the last show last week, was, not only is their starting rotation thin, once that gets messed up, then they have a thin bullpen. I believe they're looking at all of the arms they have as a collection, and they have their starting rotation, but I don't think they're going to be too shy to move anyone to the bullpen. I know that's a bigger deal, but I could see a Hayden Birdsong just based on how things went last season. Maybe they warm him up in the bullpen and he does pretty well, and they decide to leave him there. And now you have, a guy that you can rely on because he's more comfortable there. We've talked about it before. I mean, Kai Tang started games in Sacramento, and he ended up starting games in San Francisco. But we don't know that Kai Tang is actually a starter in Major League Baseball, right? He's more of an opener, and the Giants were kind of struggle busing last season. So I think they're looking at this, and not as if you have a bunch of arms and only one more starter spot or two. We don't know what's going to happen with Adrian Hauser really either, really any of the starters, to be completely honest with you. But I think they're looking at it as a collection of arms, and they can say, hey, we can use these guys. We're not afraid to use these guys out the bullpen. We don't know what they're going to be in the future anyway. So we're not really too shy, or we're not worried about it. They would like all these guys to end up being starters and all of the guys in their minor league system to eventually be their rotation, but that's probably not going to be the reality. So I think it's going to be a very important season for some of these arms, because not only will they get opportunities as starters at times, I think some of them, there'll be decisions made. Hey, we're going to try out the bullpen, at least for the time being, especially if it's going well, and go from there. So, I would say normally, because he's done a couple different media hits, and I haven't even brought him up on the show if I don't think that they're relevant. But I did think the Imai thing was interesting. The fact that he wanted to make it a point when we do tell ownership things, they listen. That doesn't mean that they say yes, right? It reminds me of when you're talking to your parents and you say, this is why I want to go out to the party on Friday, and this is why I should be able to stay out past curfew. And they say, hey, Alan, that's a great job of you breaking all this down, but the answer is still no, right? We still need you home at 10, 11 o'clock, whatever it is. So they could say, hey, they listened. They did say no, though. And I feel like that's what Zack Minasian is kind of trying to tell us. And like I said, later in the show, when we talk about Buster Posey being stonewalled, we will kind of come back to that. When we return, Susan Slusser has some reasons on why the Giants haven't made a move yet. We discuss whether we agree or not. And honestly, I feel like this was one of Susan's spicier pieces. So that's why I wanted to kind of lay it out to you. More Locked On Giants coming up. Fridays already feel different during the basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the game tips off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour always brings something new. Boosts, bonuses, and surprises. It's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. The timing is perfect, right before the games, right before the weekend starts. It adds extra energy to Friday night basketball without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour. Every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern, a little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. This is from Susan Slusser of the SF Chronicle here in this second segment of Locked On Giants. And this is a really good article, and she gives some reasons why the Giants haven't made a move. And I do think that this is a spicier article for Susan. The Giants seem weirdly inactive this winter. Here's why and what it could mean for 2026. So kind of have some breakdown of it for you, as well as actual excerpts. And then, of course, I'll give my thoughts on what is happening. So I've taken some of the important pieces. I don't have the whole article for you, but I've taken some of the important pieces and we can go from there. The Giants might not be swimming in the deep end, though. Agents for top-rated free agents have said the team checked in on big name players early in the process and left it there. So it's so funny to read this because we remember having these shows and, hey, they checked in on Framber. They had that meeting with Framber and they had that conversation with Kyle Tucker, and they were part of that poem, right, from Scott Boras or whatever it was during the winter meeting. So they did check in on these guys. Susan also mentions that there is a thought process that their Devers move was their big move, even though it happened during the season. So I don't really like that. Right? I don't really buy that because Buster, I'll never forget, I was watching a game, and I know a lot of you were probably watching the same game, and he was in the booth with Kruk and Kipe, and they were literally talking about, hey, Buster, why did you feel like you had to make this move? And Buster said, it feels like this team earned us making this move, and we wanted to give them an opportunity to go get it. To go after it and to really make a run at it this season. That was before everything went south and before they had to blow up the roster and Tyler Rogers and all of that. That was before it. So to me, that's kind of a cop-out to cover up now, even though I know he's got, 7 years left on his contract. So I get it. It is a move for the future, but it kind of feels like, hey, in case we don't say anything, we can always say, hey, remember that move we meant for Devers, which feels just a little bit disingenuous to me. So that is something that Susan talks about in the article. And it's not her saying it per se. There's a thought process of, hey, well, if you made this move during the offseason, well, everybody would say it was a huge move. Yeah, but you didn't. You made it during the season. So I mean, what are we talking about here? So I didn't love that thought process, but that gets talked about in the article. Also, Susan writes this, and look, man, if y'all get mad at me for talking about Jung-Hoo Lee, that's one thing. I know we've been doing Locked On Giants for a good amount of months now, but Susan Slusser has been around for a very, very long time. So I was a little vindicated when I read this, not because I have a problem with Jung-Hoo Lee, but because it's just the reality of what it's been. So I'm going to read this to you, and this is not Alan Sal's opinion. This is written from Susan Slusser, who we know is extremely plugged in with the Giants. An excellent defensive center fielder who can get on base would be the most sound strategy, with Lee shifting to right. If that's not possible, then at least they need a true everyday right fielder who can contribute offensively. Second base, too, is an area the Giants have checked on this winter. If the budget is somehow more of a concern than fans might like, a trade or two might be the answer. So I just wanted to read that. So y'all know this Jung-Hoo Lee stuff is real. I did not make it up. This is not a vendetta that I have just because I got moved from center field to left field my senior year at Temple University. I'm not holding that against every other center fielder. The reality is Jung-Hoo Lee is just not that great of a center fielder. So that's just a sidebar, and I just wanted to read that because there you have it. So that was Susan kind of talking about the different moves that they might make in the field. She goes on to write, starting pitching is always more risky when it comes to long-term deals, but as it turns out, Imai signed for less than anticipated. It would be surprising if something like that weren't doable for San Francisco, or trading for a starter in the final year of his contract. Now she kind of gets into why maybe some of these moves haven't been made and some of the money stuff. The Giants' attendance was up last year from 2.6 million to 2.9 million. Helpful if the finances are tight, but attendance can be tough to project year to year. One reason a lot of money on the books 5 or 6 years down the line is dicey. Along those lines, the rickety regional sports network model certainly is a concern, especially with the Giants owning a chunk of NBC Sports Bay Area. So that kind of gets in the weeds, but you understand why they have some risks out there, and this is about risk management right now. And last but not least, yes, Susan talks about that L word that we try to avoid. Looming above all these considerations is the potential for labor strife with the CBA expiring after this season. That might also be giving some teams pause. Sure, players aren't paid during work stoppages, but organizations have many other expenses beyond payroll. Perhaps some are looking ahead and tightening their belts a little more this season, including with roster expenditures, in order to have a little more padding if no money is coming in for what might be a significant stretch of 2027. There you have it. So you look at some of the things that Susan laid out. You got the CBA, right? You have the Giants' connection to NBC Sports Bay Area and how that money is flowing in or maybe not flowing in, and you just never know what's going to happen with attendance. That's all fine and good. Susan also writes that nobody else is in the Giants the Dodgers weight class, and how it's just kind of hard to compare those things. She compares all the different amounts of money being spent in the NL West, and the Giants are, I believe, right behind the Padres, if you will. They're both in that 200 million range, and then you get the Dodgers in the 300 million range. So, just some of the reasons why they haven't moved on or haven't made a big splash. So if that's Susan again telling us this, I think we should probably not believe that the Giants are going to do anything too crazy this offseason. I think you could still look at a trade or a Harrison Bader, something like that. I know I've talked about Harrison Bader a ton, but I believe they're at 5 big contracts, and they've already said, Greg Johnson, we don't want 6 or 7. So there's just no way they're going to bring in Cody Bellinger. There's just no way they're going to bring in Framber Valdez, especially with him being a pitcher. Kyle Tucker, Bo Bichette. Seems like they're out on those guys. And honestly, the more I read the end of that article, the more it made me feel like, yeah, they're protecting themselves from the lockout, right? They're protecting themselves from the idea that, hey, we can make all these moves, have all this money on the books, and then we're kind of stuck in 2027. You got a brand new manager, right? You already have these money on the books. So maybe it's hey, let's hope we sneak in to the wild card, gain some momentum, then the lockout happens, and then when the lockout ends, we can reassess all this. I know that's probably not what people want to hear, but that might not be the dumbest decision for the Giants to make outside of our fandom. If it were your money, maybe you would look at it differently. If it was your money, maybe you don't spend it on Willie Adames. Maybe you don't spend it on Matt Chapman. I don't know. But this is who they chose to spend their money on. And now they're sitting here saying, well, we really don't want to add another big contract right before this lockout could happen. And it feels like this lockout is very possible. So, might not make you feel better, but at least it gives you a couple different reasons. And that leads us into our last segment. Is Buster Posey being stonewalled? Let's talk about it right here on Locked On Giants. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Giants with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more. All for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonsfgiants.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. If you're a true diehard Giants fan, the Everydayer All Access tier is built for you. You'll get one-on-one text access with me, all access episodes, an exclusive newsletter, and a 15% discount to the Locked On merch store. Head to lockedonsfgiants.supercast.com to join the Everydayer Club and unlock all access. You can also find the link in the show notes. One more segment with you, and I came to this conclusion, if you will, or question, based on how Susan ends her article. And Susan says this: Posey is a champion, and he has that mindset. It's tough to imagine him bypassing any options that solve major needs, especially if he does have ownership's ear. Sprinkling in some back-end starters and calling it a day doesn't seem like his MO after a year on the job. So perhaps patience is the watchword here after all. We know he likes making a big splash if he's allowed to do so. And that's how she ends it. So basically, hey, we know it's tough right now, but her thought process is Buster wants to make a move. He typically likes to make a move. I'm just not sure if ownership is allowing him to make another big move. And maybe it's just a matter of, hey, this next move we make has to be the right one, and maybe taking a chance on a 5'11" Imai who's never pitched in Major League Baseball, even on a lesser deal, was not the chance that they wanted to take. Now, obviously, that would be cheaper than some of these other guys, and I know Ranger Suarez is still floating around in Framber Valdez, and I believe he'd be cheaper than both of them, but it does come with a level of risk. So maybe that's just a situation where the Giants thought, look, let's just talk this thing out. His value has been fluctuating a ton. Let's not make a risky move here, even if the risk isn't as great as we initially thought. That could very well be the case. So as far as Buster Posey being stonewalled, I do feel like, and maybe this is me and my fandom and Buster Posey and the fact that his batting stance looks like the MLB logo and all the memories that we've had with Buster, a Rookie of the Year, the list goes on, MVP, the list goes on and on. But I kind of agree with Susan here in that Buster probably wants to make a move, right? And to be honest with you, I know I'm going to bring up his name again. I never really thought that Farhan didn't want to make moves. This is the same thing I've been saying for a very long time, right? Almost a decade now. I never thought that it was Farhan who didn't want to make moves, but if somebody shuts you down, they shut you down. It's not your money. You can't just spend it whenever you want to. I think it comes back to, hey, Buster, we sat there with you and you signed some of these big deals. You were, obviously in a different role, and now you are in a more important role within the organization, but you know what it is and you know the money that we've spent so far. So this thing is not going to just be unlimited cash flow and we can just spend all the time. I know Buster's probably making his case as to, well, if we want a championship contender, it is what it is, especially when you're in the NL West. If you are in one of these other divisions, and to be honest with you, there are not a lot of divisions. Everybody is spending money now. The AL East always spends money. Look at the Blue Jays. Every time you go to sleep, right? They signed somebody else. The AL East, we know what they are. Look at the NL East with the Phillies and the Mets. So this is just what the league is turning into. And we talk about the salary cap and salary floor, which is why we might be headed towards that CBA adjustment and the lockout and all of that. But this is what it is right now. And Buster's probably making his case as to, well, this is almost an opportunity to maybe get an asset at a lesser cost because of the lockout. That'd be my argument if I were Buster. Maybe that's why we make a move now, because it ain't like it's going to be locked out forever, right? You don't have to pay these guys during the stoppage. So if we can get a Framber on maybe a lesser deal than we thought, or Ranger Suarez on less of a deal than we thought, maybe we do it now, and then when we roll it back, or maybe, look, if they're done with the pitchers, then we could say the same thing for Cody Bellinger, right, or Bo Bichette, and we would just have that set ready to go for this season, of course, and then next season, whenever that is. Right? Maybe that's the opportunity that you have here, because I don't know that these guys are going to hit their projections based on how long it's taken them to sign. I don't think that's going to happen. So that would be my argument if I were Buster, and that probably is the argument that he's making right now. So we'll have to wait and see, but it feels like to me, and I'd like to believe the Buster is trying to make these moves, and they're sitting there saying, let's kind of wait it out, maybe see if the market drops even more, and then we can kind of pounce and go from there. Thank you for watching Locked On Giants. Thank you for listening to Locked On Giants. Be sure to follow me on social media at @the_Styles Files, Styles with an I, and our official Locked On Giants account. Thank you for tuning in today. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Giants ad-free, plus members only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonsfgiants.supercast.com to join the club. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen Locked On MLB. We will talk to you tomorrow. Until then, peace.